Good afternoon. My name is Erica González Martínez, and as Vice Chair of the Women's Media Center, I'm delighted to welcome you here today for a celebration of Black women in history. This is the second lecture in the Women's Media Center Beverly Wettenstein series honoring women's history. Beverly Wettenstein, whose generous bequest made this event possible, passed away in 2019. She was a renowned journalist, speaker, media critic, and historian who dedicated her career to chronicling the representation of women in national media outlets. She was passionate about commemorating the historical contributions of women and founded the Women in History and Making History Today 365 days a year database. Her impactful work also included a herstory column in the Dallas Morning News, where she highlighted the contributions of women. Today's lecture is especially significant as it takes place on Juneteenth, a day that commemorates the emancipation of enslaved Black people in the United States. Juneteenth is a day of reflection, celebration, and a reminder of the ongoing journey towards freedom and equity. It honors the courage and determination of a people to dismantle oppressive systems, and it honors the ongoing contributions of African Americans. Today's lecture, titled Black Women Speak for Freedom, Justice, and Democracy, Historical Perspectives, will be given by Dr. Janet Dewart Bell, the president and founder of LEAD, InterGenerational Solutions, and chair of the Women's Media Center. Dr. Bell is a distinguished social justice activist with a doctorate in leadership and change from Antioch University. Her lecture will draw inspiration from her latest books, Blackbirds Singing, which celebrates the speeches of Black women from the Civil War to the 21st century, and Lighting the Fires of Freedom, African American Women in the Civil Rights Movement, a collection of conversations with 9 leaders of the Civil Rights Movement. After Dr. Bell's presentation, we will have the pleasure of listening in on an insightful conversation between Dr. Bell and Dr. Koritha Mitchell, another powerhouse woman, and the conversations filmed in the intimacy of Dr. Bell's home. Dr. Mitchell, a recipient of the Women's Media Center's Progressive Women's Voices Impact Award, is an award-winning author, cultural critic, literary historian, and professor of English at Boston University. I promise you are in for a treat. So without further ado, it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome Dr. Janet Dewart Bell.
Hello. Let me say that while I will include some provocative comments today, reflective of our challenging times, I stand here as a person of hope, backed by a lifetime of social justice activism. I will present information meant to encourage you to pursue your best self with authenticity, courage, and purpose. Give some examples of others who have done just that, and end with a call for us to be relentless in the pursuit of justice and for the salvation of civilization. No small task. But my cheat sheet, if you will, contains the inspiring words of others. But first, a little background. Mine is that I come from a family where my mother was denied the opportunity to go to high school. Born in rural Arkansas in 1917, the nearest high school for Black children was in Little Rock, 100 miles away. She was brilliant and beautiful and self-educated. That I have 4 earned degrees is not about me, but it is a testament to her brilliance, faith, and unwavering love and support. My father, born in rural Georgia in 1898, was illiterate. A generation from legal slavery, his schools were under the subjugation of the agricultural needs of the white community, cotton picking and the like. My father could not read nor write, but he too was brilliant, as were the other Black men with whom he worked in factories and on assembly lines. they could memorize complex directions and carry them out. They always encouraged me to get my edumacation. They could not pronounce education and certainly could not spell it, but they knew what it was, and it was more than precious. It was a pathway to liberation. I am so excited that this lecture premieres on Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a solemn observation mixed with optimism, hope, and joy, a symbol of substance. Juneteenth is the date of June 19, 1865, when Texas slaves were finally told that they were free, or at last no property of whites, due to the Emancipation Proclamation President Lincoln had signed 2 years earlier. What did freedom mean? Lincoln himself said that his actions were not to free the slaves, but to save the Union. Then as now, Black lives did not fully matter. Most Americans are now aware of Juneteenth because of the presidential proclamation by Joseph Biden. But earlier, Donald Trump held a political rally on Juneteenth. This in a city where hundreds of Black men, women, and children were massacred in the so-called riots in Tulsa on June the 1st, 1921. Tulsa's Black community, sometimes referred to as Black Wall Street because of its prosperity, needed to be kept in its place. How dare Black people consider themselves equal to be successful against the odds? You know, uppity? Why couldn't they be satisfied with the crumbs of trickle-down economics? Right-wing commentators are whining and crying foul, charging that it is unfair to even consider white supremacist terrorism, the intentional distortion of history, the use of racial dog whistles, the frightening willingness of good white people to do nothing, therefore to be complicit. Sometimes they forget, and then, when there was no one else to speak for them, they came for me. Some of us also remember when Ronald Reagan launched his presidential bid in Neshoba County, Mississippi. You see, there's a pattern here where 3 civil rights workers, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, were murdered by the Ku Klux Klan in 1964. Reagan's was not an innocent accident of scheduling. His was an intentional dog whistle to galvanize white support, especially among poor whites who are cynically exploited to be the foot soldiers in protecting a system that is unfair to them, too. White terrorists infiltrate peaceful protests to this day to foment mayhem and chaos by throwing the first brick, knowing that white people will not be held responsible to the extent of their actions. January 6th has shown us that even in the overwhelming evidence, that is so. Blacks and whites look at the same pictures, but see different images. For blacks, the brutal history of American racism is being played out in real time. For many whites, the images confirm their worst fears and racist stereotypes about Black and other people of color. The murder of George Floyd, caught on camera by Darnella Frazier, even as she was in harm's way, had galvanized protests here and abroad. The courage of this 17-year-old African American is in the spirit of Ida B. Wells, whose posthumous Pulitzer Prize gave long-standing motivation as we continue the fight for freedom, equality, and justice for all. Ida B. Wells, in her journalistic excellence and bravery, covered lynchings and riots 100 years ago. Racism is not about Black people and other people of color. Racism affects us all. None of us is free until we all are free. The young people of all races protesting the death of George Floyd and so many others seem to know that it is their future on the line. They are confronting the lies that taught them to be complicit in the subjugation of others and in their own moral and ethical compromise. They are demanding change now. We Americans have acquiesced to sanitized terms used to dance around straight talk about racism. We say income inequality, housing discrimination, prejudice, bias, implicit or explicit. Too many Americans of goodwill have remained silent, while the white supremacists have constructed a narrative and political social network to marginalize and demonize people of color and poison the body politic. Remember the martyrs of the Tulsa Massacre. Remember, too, this moment in time. We do not have the luxury of willful ignorance and silent observation. The good news, and there is always good news, is that we, the people, have an unprecedented opportunity to break the chokehold of American racism so that we can at last breathe free. I'd like to talk about challenges and opportunities, about living our lives with meaning and worth. To quote my late husband, the great Dewart Bell, and yes, I can say that, the first Black tenured professor at Harvard Law School, a prophet and civil and human rights leader, a lawyer for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, he opened the doors for others. Authenticity, courage, purpose is my personal mantra and the connective thread of my research and writing. Lighting the fires of freedom, African American women in the civil rights movement, and Blackbirds Singing, inspiring Black women's speeches from the Civil War to the 21st century among my writings. I am both proud and humbled that Ketanji Brown Jackson used my dissertation as a reference for a speech celebrating the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. before she was nominated to the Supreme Court. With dignity, grace, and courage, she endured brutal and cruel attacks during the confirmation process by petty and pathetic people trying to score political points. I was raised in the Black church, a beacon of hope. We were taught the 10 Commandments, not suggestions or TikTok postings, but commands to love your neighbor as yourself. The Black community of my youth and upbringing, although not a monolith, taught responsibility, integrity, honesty, courage, compassion, and service to others. Dr. King, a great servant leader, proclaimed, "Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. There were countless servant leaders who helped create and were part of the American Civil Rights Movement, our freedom movement. Among them were Bayard Rustin, the chief organizer of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, whose critical role is achieving long overdue recognition in the movie Rustin. A brilliant man, also Black and gay. Remember the times. His role then was underplayed. Rustin was also a pacifist and added to Dr. King's understanding about nonviolent protests that King had studied from Mahatma Gandhi and Black theologian Howard Thurman, among others. Also underplayed were the women of the Civil Rights Movement. During the Civil Rights Movement, African Americans led the fight to free this country from the vestiges of slavery and Jim Crow. Though they were all too often and remain invisible to the public, African American women played significant roles at all levels of the movement. These women did not stand on ceremony. They simply did the work that needed to be done without expectation of personal gain. In my book, Lighting the Fires of Freedom, African American Women in the Civil Rights Movement, I was honored to be able to interview 9 women who played significant roles at all levels in that freedom movement, including the indomitable and iconic Myrlie Everts. They had an ethical foundation and visionary approach to transformational leadership built on mutual respect, creative problem solving, and an understanding of the need for systemic change. They knew that their fate relied on working with the communities, and they worked to uplift the communities, to lift all boats. They did not work for themselves. And by the way, African American progress lifts all boats. The movement, of course, began long before what some people think was the beginning, the March on Washington. One significant event was the 1955-56 year-long Montgomery bus boycott, largely planned, coordinated, and sustained by women. Recently called as pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, this event helped propel Dr. King and Rosa Parks to prominence. Less known was the role of Joanne Robinson, a teacher at the local Black college and president of the Black Civil Rights Organization, the Women's Political Council. The Women's Political Council had planned and strategized for the day when a bus boycott would happen and was ready when Rosa Parks sat down to stand up for justice. Absent mass transportation, they had planned alternate transportation and communication systems. Remember, there were no cell phones or internet services. The women stayed up all night to copy and distribute flyers calling for the boycott. They waited anxiously to see if people would heed the call, and they did. Withstanding white violence and pervasive threats to their lives and livelihoods, they persevered. Their heroic actions and sacrifices for over a year resulted in the integration of Montgomery's buses and a Supreme Court ruling on public accommodations. We might not get that ruling today. My research on women in the civil rights movement led me to think about some women who had come before, which led to looking at the speeches that women had made from the Civil War to now. Because even as Black women negotiated or forced our way into the public square, our words were often distorted and taken out of context, trivialized, ignored, or weaponized against us. Because we have not owned the means of mass communication, printing presses to the internet, Black women often talk into the wind. But somehow, women have had their say. The vortex of the current book ban frenzy seeks to silence, in particular, Black women, from Toni Morrison to the young poet Amanda Gorman. Toni Morrison, a fearless chronicler of Black lives, was also a Nobel laureate. She reminded us that we must resist the acculturation of American racism and love ourselves fiercely, unapologetically, but always with love for others. Too often, Black people love others and forget to love ourselves. Our songs may come from weary throats, to echo Polly Murray's memoir, but Black women continue to sing songs of truth, inspiration, and rebellion. And yes, the title of my latest book was inspired by Paul McCartney's song Blackbird, a tribute to the American Civil Rights Movement, specifically the Little Rock Nine. The cover art on Blackbirds Singing features a sculpture of Sojourner Truth, who is the signature voice for the genesis of this book. She lived from 1797 to 1883 and witnessed America's growth and turmoil, slavery, the Civil War, emancipation, such as it was, and the beginning of the fight for women's suffrage. She changed her name from Isabella Baumfree to Sojourner Truth and became an itinerant wanderer who spoke truth to power. She could not read nor write. Imagine how phenomenal you had to be to do that. On May 9th, 1867, she addressed the first annual meeting of the Equal Rights Association, beginning with these words: "My friends, I am rejoiced that you are glad, but I don't know how you will feel when I get through. I come from another field, the country of the slave." She said she wanted slavery root and branch destroyed. She understood the need for systemic change. Because the lives of Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, who lived from 1822 to 1913, overlapped, people often confuse them or conflate their stories, but their contributions were distinct. Harriet Tubman, an escaped slave known as Moses, was the chief conductor of the Underground Railroad, a scout, spy, guerrilla soldier, and nurse for the Union Army. She is considered the first African-American woman to serve in the military. She worked mostly without pay or pension. When she was in danger of losing her home in 1886, historian Sarah Hopkins Bradford wrote Harriet, the Moses of her people, in a successful effort to raise funds to save it. The following is a direct quote from the book. "For," said she, "I had reasoned this out of my mind. There was one of two things I had a right to, liberty or death." Tom Paine, do you hear me? "If I could not have one, I would not have the other. For no man should take me alive. I should fight for my liberty as long as my strength lasted. And when the time came for me to go, the Lord would let them take me." Bradford continues, and she says, about Harriet Tubman. And so, without money and without friends, she started on through unknown regions, walking by night, hiding by day, but always conscious of an invisible pillar of cloud by day and of fire by night, under the guidance of which she journeyed or rested. Without knowing whom to trust or how near the pursuers might be, she carefully felt her way. And by her native cunning or by God-given wisdom, she managed to apply to the right people for food and sometimes for shelter, though often her bed was only the cold ground and her watcher the stars at night. A better-known speech is that of Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, the first Black woman elected to Congress from Texas, who, on July 25, 1974, stated the following in her opening statement to the House Judiciary Committee in their proceedings on the impeachment of Richard Nixon. Earlier today, we heard the beginning of the preamble to the Constitution of the United States. We, the people. It is a very eloquent beginning, but when that document was completed on the 17th of September in 1787, I was not included in we, the people. I felt somehow for many years that George Washington and Alexander Hamilton just left me out by mistake. But through the process of amendment, interpretation, and court decision, I have finally been included in we, the people. I believe hyperbole would not be fictional and would not overstate the solemnness that I feel right now. My faith in the Constitution is whole, it is complete, it is total. I am not going to sit here and be an idle spectator to the diminution, the subversion, the destruction of the Constitution. And then there's Archer Lord, who delivered a paper in 1980. And she talked about intersectionality. She said much of Western European history conditions us to see human differences in simplistic opposition to each other. Dominant, subordinate, good, bad, up, down, superior, inferior. In a society where the good is defined in terms of profit rather than in terms of human need, there must always be some group of people who, through systematized oppression, can be made to feel surplus, to occupy the place of the dehumanized inferior. Within this society, that group is made up of Black and third world people, working class people, older people, and women. She goes on. As a 49-year-old Black, lesbian, feminist, socialist mother of two, including one boy, and a member of an interracial couple, I usually find myself a part of some group defined as other, deviant, inferior, or just plain wrong. Traditionally, in American society, it is the members of oppressed, objectified groups who are expected to stretch out and bridge the gap between the actualities of our lives and the consciousness of our oppressor. The oppressors maintain their position and evade responsibilities for their actions. There is a constant drain of energy which might better be used in redefining ourselves and devising realistic scenarios for altering the present and constructing the future. Institutionalized rejection of difference is an absolute necessity in a profit economy, which needs outsiders as surplus people. As members of such an economy, we have all been programmed to respond to the human differences between us with fear and loathing, and to handle that difference in one of three ways. Ignore it, and if that is not possible, copy it if we think it is dominant, or destroy it if we think it is subordinate. But we have no patterns for relating across our human differences as equals. As a result, those differences have been misnamed and misused in the service of separation and confusion. Certainly, there are very real differences between us in age, race, and sex, but it is not those differences that are separating us. It is rather our refusal to recognize those differences and to examine the distortion which result from us misnaming them and their effects upon human behavior and expectation. Shirley Chisholm, when declaring her presidential bid, January 25, 1972, in Brooklyn, New York, said, "I stand before you today as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States of America. I am not the candidate of Black America, although I am Black and proud. I am not the candidate of the women's movement of this country, although I am a woman, and I am equally proud of that. I am a candidate for the people of America. I have faith in the American people. I believe that we are smart enough to correct our mistakes. I know that millions of Americans from all walks of life agree with me that leadership does not mean putting the ear to the ground to follow public opinion, but to have the vision of one necessary and the courage to make it possible." I will end with Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou, born in 1928, died in 2014, said, "She did not only know why the cage bird sings, she set free the aspirations of countless people, not only in the arts, but in social justice, working with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and with Malcolm X. She delivered the poem on the pulse of morning at the 1993 inauguration of President Bill Clinton and was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Barack Obama in 2010. Her poem was an anthem of hope, ending with these words: "For a new beginning, do not be wedded forever to fear, yoked eternally to brutishness. Here, on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out, and into your sister's eyes, and into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning." Maya Angelou's words speak truth to power, along with calls for decency, compassion, peace, justice, freedom, and yes, love. And yes, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We need to work together passionately for justice, to save this precious earth from being destroyed by greed and ignorance, to secure the future for our children and grandchildren. we have no choice but to win. Thank you.
Well, I am absolutely delighted, Dr. Bell, to be in conversation with you. That was an amazing lecture. Thank you so much for inviting us into your home for this amazing experience. The place I want to begin, and I guess I should say, my name is Koritha Mitchell. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a professor of English at Boston University after 18 years at Ohio State University. So because I am so interested in literature, being able to talk with you about these speeches is just such an absolute honor. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. I have to say, what an honor it is for me to be interviewed by you, Dr. Koritha Mitchell.
So the place I want to begin is you shared with us that your personal mantra is authenticity, courage, and purpose. And as we're here in your home, I feel like we're surrounded by authenticity, courage, and purpose with the pictures of various people that you've been in conversation with over the years, in intellectual community with over the years, all of the books, the art. And so I wondered if you would begin by sharing with us the way that you decided to move from your first book, where you were interviewing civil rights leaders, to this book where we're spanning even more time, where we begin in the Civil War. Because with your first book, there's so much focus on the civil rights movement. And today you were sharing with us those moments like Juneteenth, where Trump was doing his stunt in Tulsa in the most insulting way possible. You linked that to us very powerfully to the way that Ronald Reagan did a very similar thing. So there's a way in which you were giving us recent history that linked to the civil rights movement, but this second book is really going further back. So I wondered if you would begin by sharing with us what made you decide to take up this project.
Well, I actually had help, and I think most of us have help if we listen. My publisher, the New Press, came to me and they said, after Lighting the Fires of Freedom, we have an idea for this book and we think you're the person to do it. And I said, what's that? And they told me, so I am the person to do it. I mean, I knew this immediately. And it gave me an opportunity to have even a longer view and have a sense of how deep not only those characteristics are for women, particularly Black women, but how those are such motivational structures for us. And I was just so excited to do it. And we started this before the pandemic, and then things did not move, and we did not have a title, so my book contract said Untitled. And I said, oh no, the title is Blackbirds Singing. And they were, oh, okay. And I said, no, that is the perfect title. Yeah. And after years and conversation, and when we came out of the pandemic, that title went out. And I think it absolutely captures what it should be. It talks about the, and I believe that things should be both very specific and evocative. And Blackbirds, which was inspired by Paul McCartney's song, Blackbird. And the reason he wrote that, and I've told people that, and they didn't know it, is that bird is English slang for woman or girl, and black, well, we got that part. But he was watching the integration of Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he thought, well, I'm an artist, I'm a musician, what can I do? And in his genius way, in his left-handed strumming, he wrote Blackbirds Singing. Yes, you know, and in the dead of night. And so it was just wonderful. And it also says to me, is that even though I'm very specific, as you know, as when you get your doctorate, you have to really focus on a certain area. And so my area of specialty is really Black women's voices. I want Black women's vision and voices. I elevate those, but I also want to say that we are not alone. Yes. And that we have allies, and we need to look, we have a focus. And I think a focus, when you focus on culture, that is really liberating to you, and it also gives you the opportunity to look outside of yourself. So I'm just excited about, I'm excited about the book. I'm excited about the women, and I learned about women I had not heard of before. And people are saying to me, "Oh, I hadn't heard of them," and I said, "Well, neither did I." I had to do a little research there.
And that's lovely, because I think that part of what comes through is the way that you're tapping into the energy and the inspiration of ancestors. So it feels to me like the first book, you're sometimes talking to more contemporary people that are in more recent history. And here you're giving us the connection to say they're connected to people who came even earlier. I'm connected. And here, reader, I'm giving you the way to be connected as well. So
that is a great summary. Thank you so much. But the other thing too is that I wanted to look at, so for example, Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, who people think they know, and give a little bit of insight beyond what everyone thinks they know. Yes. To say what they said in their own words as best we can recount them. Exactly. And so that's really what gets me excited.
Now, I was struck by the fact that, as you said in your speech, that Sojourner Truth is really a kind of anchoring voice. But I was also struck by the fact that the first speech that you include from her includes the fact that she said, "I'm going to give a few more talks, so let me pause here and sing." So the fact that your first speech begins with someone who is singing felt really powerful and resonant with the fact that you sang as a part of your speech here today too. So I wonder if you would say more about singing in relationship to the speeches that you included. And I guess to offer more context of what I mean, I was really struck by the fact that you said this in the introduction of the book. Because Black women were prohibited and then inhibited from being involved in the political system, the book expands the definition of speeches to include some writings that women did not have the opportunity to present in public forum. And because I am so invested in performance and performance studies and theater history, this really struck me as a way that you were calling your readers' attention to the embodiment of Black women, right? That we have their words, but we also need to remember that they went through this society in a particular body that this society responds to in particular ways. And very often in racist, sexist ways, right, as you would emphasize for us. So I just wonder if you wanted to say more about the way that you want your readers to be thinking about these women's voices and their embodiment.
Well, I might have overstated a little bit about Sojourner Truth singing, because that's what I hear with her words. Mm-hmm. But what I also understand is that here is a woman who could not read or write. Can you imagine having that kind of brain, mm-hmm, to be able to take that information and then insert yourself into areas where they didn't want us? Exactly. I mean, she pushed herself on those stages, and she talked, and she claimed her space, she claimed, yes, her voice. And I have to admit that when I was younger, decades, scores ago, I did not understand Sojourner Truth. By that I meant we had a woman in our neighborhood. I grew up in a poor neighborhood, which was integrated. We had all sorts of people, but we had a commonality, is we did not have any money. Mm. And there was this woman who would come around, and frankly, she frightened me when I was a child, and her name was Sister Lou. And I realized decades later that she was in the spirit of Sojourner Truth. And she was an itinerant teacher, and she believed in getting us to, going up yonder, getting to the holy ground. And I missed that when I was a child. So I understand that people don't get it. But as I've gotten older, of course, and gotten academic as we are, I read books by Nell Irvin Painter about Sojourner Truth, she has written the book on Sojourner Truth. So I tell people, if you like it, if you have a little bit of taste about this, go to Nell Irvin Painter. And I think she is a historian par excellence, right?
Absolutely.
And she's an artist. You knew that, right?
Absolutely.
She quit her academic career to start painting. I mean, really?
I know. I know.
But I think it's the what I look at when I see these women from Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman who did so much. They were not just singular individuals. I mean, Harriet Tubman, after she retired, she's like still doing work. She didn't have to. I mean, people say I paid my dues. Didn't pay any dues. Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Mary Shad Carey, they paid dues.
Yes.
And what we're doing, we're living on their legacy.
Absolutely.
And we have to move it forward. That's our job.
And that was what I really came away from your lecture understanding, the charge for us to get involved. I'm really struck by the fact that one of the speeches that you shared with us today is from Audre Lorde, and your preliminary comments also linked us and reminded us of the work of Bayard Rustin and the work that he did. And so it feels to me like your selections are really diverse in terms of making sure that we have a recognition of Black women of every sort, right? That Audre Lorde was owning the fact that she was a lesbian in an interracial couple, and all of the wisdom about what being in the United States means when you are at those intersections. So I wonder if you would say some more about the different people that you decided to include.
Well, I think that you picked that your response to Audre Lorde is exactly what I wanted it to be. I didn't want to talk about, Black women are great. I know that, you know that. But I also wanted to say, this is what Black women are thinking about, and they have a broader response to where we are, to civilization. And so I had the opportunity, God thank you, I was sitting on a wall at Howard University, and Bayard Rustin came by, and people didn't know who he was, and I went, Mr. Rustin? And he sat down and talked with me for 30 minutes. And Maya Angelou says sometimes you don't remember what people say, but you remember how they made you feel. And I was just totally engrossed with what he was saying, and I was so impressed by this human being. And so when I think about Audre Lorde, and I think about her, she was, I always say, bodacious, brilliant, beautiful, and bodacious. How she would come out and say it just like she felt it. That is incredible. So I wanted to really give a sense of how Black women really reach beyond ourselves, and what we do is try to the Black Women's Club movement. I can't remember who had said this, but said lifting as we climb, but we also try to lift all boats. It's not been about ourselves. That's been the history. Some of that has been lost now, and so I want to keep telling people what it is we've done, because that has been the salvation not only of Black women, African Americans, our race, but I think of the country that we have looked at. We are responsible for things that people are dismantling now, like public education system. Hello?
Absolutely.
Health systems, how community support, and we cannot let go of the fact that we have to, even if the community is not contiguous, that we have to really be responsible for a community that if we don't protect it, no one else will, and we have to grow it from there. So I'm excited. I love talking about Audre Lorde. I think she just is, and I happen to know someone who knew her. So I never met Audre Lorde, but I'm excited about the person who knew her, and Dr. Blanche Wiesen Cook, who is the Eleanor Roosevelt biographer, who knows far more about her than I do. But it's exciting.
Yes.
Too.
Well, and again, I feel like you're underscoring courage and purpose, that you're giving us the tools to connect to the way that our forebears have tapped into courage and purpose. And part of what I was struck by is one of the people who is in both your earlier book and this book is Shirley Chisholm. And part of what you shared with us today is that Chisholm said she believed that Americans were smart enough to learn to correct our mistakes. And so I just am thinking about the way that you, again, reminded us of these bold stunts that were all about being violent toward Black and brown communities. Again, the Juneteenth stunt in Tulsa, and then Reagan's stunt in Mississippi. And you made the point that what was happening in both situations is that politicians were cynically using disfranchised white people as their foot soldiers. And then you reminded us that right now we're watching as young people are challenging the lies that they've been told, because they recognize that if they accept those lies, then they will accept injustice. So I guess I bring that up just because I feel like as you tell us to take inspiration from the women who wrote these speeches, it feels like you're saying take the inspiration so that we can join those young people in challenging those lies.
And I always say the women who gave these speeches, because some of them could not write them down. And so it's important for us as academics to remember that people who do not have the degrees have the authenticity, courage, and purpose, and they move forward. And also for young people who, part of the atmosphere that they have now is to discourage them. And we need to, as older people, I give speeches to younger people. You know, I do intergenerational work. And I always tell my age, because I think it's important to do that, so it puts me in context. So I'm happy to tell young people, I was born in 1946. And so at age 6 in 1952, my mom had me going around, you know, with political signs, because she knew that politics was important, and that was our future. And I embrace that, and so the legacy that I have from these women in my books, and the legacy I have from my mom, is that you do not have the right. I can hear my mom all the time, honey, you do not have the right to sit on the sidelines. You have to be active, you have to be involved, but you have to do it with ethics, compassion, and love. I mean, and so that's what drives me forward. And I'm just grateful. I count my blessings. And my blessings are that, one, I was born in an era where hope, I think, was more obvious than it is now. I can understand why some young people are trying to opt out, but I say, you don't have that choice. The winning argument for them is not, oh, well, you know, people died for your right to vote. But that's not the argument. The winning argument is your vote is your future. It's climate change. I remember having conversations with people 20, 30 years ago about people who call themselves social justice activists. And I said, well, you know, we have to talk about climate change. And they're saying that's not our issue. I said, it's got to be our issue.
Absolutely.
You know, because it's not about us. It's what kind of earth are we leaving for those who come behind us. But I'm just one of the people, my all-time favorite interview, and I've interviewed a lot of people, is Myrlie Evers. Myrlie Evers, to me, epitomizes someone who understood that she needed to take care of not only her family, but her community, the nation, and she moved forward. She always did that. And by the way, she just recently was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, well, it's about time.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
you know, it is what it is. But she is a real person, and she really was my inspiration as I was trying to figure out how I summarize the themes of these women I've interviewed over the years. And she was really the single biggest inspiration for the authenticity, because when you meet her, people want to meet this she's going to be a saint and everything. She's down to earth. She talks it. She tells you just like she feels it, and it's a little startling sometimes for people who are expecting to see someone who is saying. Now she's very particular about her language. She's beautiful. She speaks beautifully, and we actually tease her about that. But that's one thing that she felt that she needed to do. I just love Myrlie Evers, and she's my, I think, next to my mom, probably, and my grandmother, my biggest heroine.
Wow. Yes, I noticed that she was in both books. So as we close, I wonder if you'll share with us, you just mentioned that Myrlie Evers is a kind of favorite. It feels to me like there is a speech or 2 or 10 for literally any reader who picks up this book. But I wonder if you would share maybe the most surprising speeches for you, and also what you would say are your favorites for young people of the speeches that you included.
I think that probably the most surprising was really Audre Lorde, and that the breadth at which she talked. You know, she get a wide-ranging speech, and I think that for contemporary young people to know that she really embraced all of that, the totality of her being, and she embraced it unapologetically. I think that's probably the most surprising one. But the ones that are very accessible, you have Shirley Chisholm and Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee, who got involved in politics because of Shirley Chisholm, is very straightforward. So I love that. It's just after Myrlie Evers, it's one of those. I get to the point where they say, well, you know, parents say, well, I love all my children like, and you know that's a lie. And so I used to say, I love all my people I've interviewed like, and I finally just said, no, I'm sorry. Myrlie Evers is like, she's there, and then the rest of them I love alike. But I think that it's hard for me to say beyond that, but just to look at the people and who you think you know, and hear what they really had to say. Having their say is very important, and you may interpret their say a little bit differently than I did, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Just look into it, and then if that motivates you to change your way of thinking, or to do more research and correct it. But the most important thing that I want people to get out is that speak up. I don't think I have to agree with you and what have you, but say it like you feel it, but say it authentically, and have a fact base, please. Don't just make up stuff. You know, just do things that make sense, and do things that you know that honor your history and honor the fact that there are people who brought you this far. You know, that there are people upon whose shoulders you stand. And I think that when you do that, we'll get different voices, and we will and also to understand that with this book banning frenzy, I mean, how could someone ban Amanda Gorman? I mean, how fearful and pathetic can you be to want to ban a book by this young woman? It makes no sense whatsoever. And so I think for young people to say, okay, we're going to stand up in the face of all of this, but we have our rights, and that we know that our future is at stake, and we're going to do. We have to convince them that there are people that we still, after all of this time, for me, after all of this time, I have hope, I have energy, and I want my young people, I love them, I want them to secure their future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Authenticity, courage, and purpose. You have
Indeed.
certainly embodied that and given us the tools to follow your example. Thank you.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much.